brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking hosts, the good old boys. Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Hello and welcome to Sip, Suds, and Smokes. This is good old boy Mike, and this is another Suds episode. We'll be talking about everything good in life is worth discussing. This is part of our boat beer series that we're going to go through today. I am one of your humble hosts here at the table, and I have lots of great folks here with me. Reverend Mark has joined us once again.
Hello, friends.
Good old boy Dave.
Hey.
It's the most humble opening we've had from good old boy Dave. It's definitely right off the bat. How about that? Good old gal Julieanna's at the table.
Beer.
See, she was far more creative than you there. So this is good old boy Mike at the table as well. Our Sud segments are all about beer, and more beer. Today's episode is, again, part of our boat beer series. We're going to be covering a lot of great beer in this. It is all about Saisons. I'm going to cover a lot more about today's episode. Reverend Mark gets the honors of going over our Suds ratings today.
All right. We will be tasting and discussing these beers and rating them with these Suds ratings plus our signature belching sounds. Here are those ratings now. Number 1, that sucks. Give me anything but a bud. Number 2, was that a belch? Number 3, what a relief. Number 4, a body should really not make that sound. And number 5, listen to that hang time. Give me another.
Right.
I almost feel it's yes, please.
Woo!
Massive applause.
Woo-hoo!
I'm telling you, everyone's going nuts. I'm so glad he got through that.
Now that's how you list Sud ratings.
I'm telling you,
That's how it's
he
done.
is talented. Please, people, hold back the applause. Today's episode is a beer style episode, and it is part of our boat beer series. We've picked one type of beer to talk about today, and this is going to be about Saisons. And we discuss what is the style and some commercial examples, and then we'll get to the beer today. Is how we're going to go through things. Hang on to your hat, because I will tell you, there are some really great beer we're going to get to talk about in this episode. This episode may run a little bit longer than some of our typical episodes, but I would tell you that this is definitely well worth the discussion and time for today. So, Saisons. It is definitely a style that I would say that most people don't particularly understand everything about it. We actually have the BJCP style guidelines in front of us, which is the Beer Judge Competition. What's the P?
Beer Judge Certification Program.
I knew I'd forget.
This guy.
I'm so glad that I'm not certified yet.
You're certifiable.
Well.
Yes, I knew that we would all get to that point rather quickly. But I would like to offer a quick summary, kind of about the general style. Usually when I think about Saisons, it's fresh is definitely the first word that hops out. It's very light. There's very low bittering. There's really no perceived alcohol, though maybe kind of sneaky, in the beer itself. I'm looking for that really, a very soft malt that has been. There's something else that's usually there alongside it. It's very subtle and muted flavors. If I am not using the word hint when I'm talking about flavor when it comes to Saisons, probably something is off balance when it comes to talking about Saisons. So, I thought I'd throw the question to you guys. When you hear the word, Saison, what do you think about?
I think about summertime. I think about light, refreshing beers that definitely have that Belgian characteristic, but are not overwhelming. They're very easy to drink and are very refreshing.
Definitely out on the lake, for sure. Yep, or anywhere in the summertime. Reverend, what do you think about when somebody says the word saison?
Yeah, I would follow up on that and say that, for me it is Saison is French for season, and it's a seasonal ale that was brewed in the colder months, preparing for the warmer months of farm work. The thing, like as a home brewer, that I like the most about Saisons is that the sort of the style parameters are a little bit wide, and that you can use a lot of different kinds of adjunct grains in your malt grist. That is, you normally use a pale kind of a Belgian malt or Pilsner malt, but you can use spelt, you can use wheat, you can use rye, you can use oats. It really has to do with what kinds of grains were available on any given farm.
Yeah, and that broad range of beers we're going to talk about, covering a lot of the gamut of what you're talking about today. So that's really, I'm glad that you brought that into light, is that it's not necessarily the ingredients that are making this style itself like some other styles. It is more a matter of the crafting characteristic that you're doing with the ingredients that you have at hand, right?
Yeah, and what's particular to your region or to even your farm. It's kind of like asking someone who's a chili aficionado, how do you make chili? What's your chili? There's hundreds of chili recipes, and you can't say one is right and the other's wrong. It's kind of like, where do you come from? What part of the country, suggests this spice regimen and all that?
That's true. Texans put steak in, and everybody else puts
no beans. And no beans,
No beans,
Yeah, so I think Saison, although we're not necessarily in a strict sense talking about chili, it's the same sort of analogy in that, you can just go from region to region, from farmhouse to farmhouse, and you have a very particular kind of working man's beer, and it really is meant for those who are farmhands to drink, in the sort of the pitching heat of the summer day, and yet it's not to be so alcoholic that they can't finish the day. So it's more of a supplement to their diet.
It's like instead of farm to table, it's farm to glass.
I like that.
Yeah.
Beer, the dietary supplement.
It's what's for lunch.
Julieanna, when somebody says that word, what do you think about?
Well, just to expand upon that, that what you guys said is true. It is for the farmers, and so I think of something that is earthy, something that is something very organic, but yet something light, because certainly the farmers do not want something like a heavy stout to drink, while they're working on the land during the day. This is something that's going to be grassy, it's going to be herbally, it's going to be slightly pungent, just like what you're harvesting or
just
working
like the
on.
Farmers, slightly pungent.
Exactly. They're pungent, but they're whatever. So there's a degree of sweat. I know. There's a degree of sweat and earth in this, and that's what I love about Saisons.
Well, great discussion about what you guys think about in terms of what is a Saison. So my follow-up question to this is, there's a couple of beers that are really, really close to this. So I see a lot of things that are labeled farmhouse beer. What is the difference between farmhouse ale and Saison in your mind?
Well, I would say that like all Saisons historically are farmhouse ales, but not all farmhouse ales are categorically Saison. Mm-hmm. So, sort of they're somewhat interrelated, but they're not synonymous.
I feel like I'm failing the porter stout, conversation, once again. But is that word that I had, really jumping out was fresh. Mm-hmm. Is that something that cuts across, both the domains of really fresh, ingredients, fresh beer?
Well, absolutely. But I think with Saisons, even though there's a fairly broad range of ingredients that you could use, it is a style, and it is a certain type of yeast that goes into making a Saison, whereas a farmhouse, a lot of times it really comes down to the local yeast. So it's an even more local beer than a Saison, really, because it could be the yeast that comes off the fruits or vegetables that come out of your farm. So it is something really that a farmer would make with what he had at hand.
Right. Well, one of the comments that I had as we were kind of talking about this is one of the beers that I become overtly concerned about being skunked by light. Mm-hmm. It seems to be more delicate and tends to be more prone to turning just because of the nature of a lot of the ingredients that they tend to use. So I can see that people are very polarized and may have encountered a Saison that didn't taste so great, because it's become skunked. We actually had one in the group today that I don't know that it was skunked or not, but definitely didn't appeal to me anyway.
Some sort of varmint got to it.
I don't know.
May not have been a skunk.
No, not that, but maybe light. As simple as that. So one of the things I wanted to mention were what are some commercial examples that you may know of and that you can see on shelves, some of which we're actually going to get to talk about today. Definitely when somebody says the word Saison, the very first brewery that comes to my mind is DuPont.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot think of a finer example, a commercial example than DuPont. It's just one of the very first places that I go to. We actually have another reference beer, which is the Saison de Pipaix. Mm-hmm. I think that's how you say it. Actually in the lineup today to go through a couple of other commercial examples are New Belgian Saison, Lost Abbey's Red Barn Ale, and Amagon Hennepin are a couple of other commercial examples of the style of Saison. So that swings us around to the beers that we are going to get to talk about today. In our lineup, we have quite the lineup, and I don't mean to toot my own horn here at all, but I am really glad that I know the guy that brought a lot of these beers for us to go through, because holy sweet.
He brought them in on his fishing boat.
I'm telling you, fire up the boat, because some really great beers we're going to get to go through today. Here is the list of beers we're going to go through on this show. The first is Foret from DuPont, RedRock Le Quatre, 21st Amendment Sneak Attack, Dupont Cuvee Dry Hop 2013, Cricket Stave Vielle, Jolly Pumpkins I.O. Saison, Baudelaire beer is Saison de Pipaix. We've talked about the Birrificio de Ducato Nuova Mattina is also called the New Morning beer, and Sierra Nevada's Vielle Abbey, Saison, and the last beer is from the Bruery. It is Saison de Lente, are the beers that we're going to get to go through today. So lots of great beers that we're going to go through. So basically, one of our style shows, what we're going to do here is each of our hosts are going to pick their top three. We're going to go around and just basically comment across the table as each of us goes through each of these beers. So we've had a great time tasting all these beers. I can't wait to get to the discussion. Any volunteers to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, all right.
I'll go first.
I always head to my left, so
I always like to go first because then Reverend Mark is copying me.
Well, it looks like we will be copying each other from what I can see.
So I'm gonna start at the top, and it's one that you mentioned as a go-to Saison when people think of the word Saison. Saison Dupont Cuvee Dry Hopped, or Dry Hopped Cuvee, however you want to say it.
I mean, just wow.
So this beer is amazing. It's crisp and refreshing. It's rounded. It's it's malty. There's just a little bit of spice, and the dry hopping to me really doesn't add a ton to the flavor, but it rounds off the aroma in a very very sweet way. I'm going to go ahead and just tell you what my rating is because I want to hear what the other folks have to say about it. I gave it a 5.
Wow. Well, talk about starting off, and I'm really that's great that a referenceable beer is really holding very well up in such a long lineup of saisons to talk about. I don't mind chiming in really quick about this. So there's a little bit of a story behind this beer. The one we're tasting today is the Saison Dupont Cuvee Dry Hop, and it is a 2013 version. I really have to hand out some kudos to a really great store in Greenville, North Carolina, Best Way. Really great store, and I remember walking through there and walking out with nearly 4 cases of beer, and they were so kind to me that this was one of the beers that they had just come in, and there was not quite a bit of it really on the market at that particular point in time, and it was beer that I actually got to take back. And I've had a lot of Saison DuPont, but the Cuvée Dry Hop version is definitely not something to pass up. I wouldn't say this is completely impossible to find at all. And some of my tasting notes around this, really fell into some of what you're talking about here, Dave. I mean, the first word I wrote down was wow.
Yeah.
And it's very creamy and very decadent. It's just nearly perfect. I mean, if somebody had put Saison on a poster and put this beer there, I would have absolutely, said this is a really good candidate. My SUDS rating actually for the same beer is going to be a 4. Any other comments about the Saison DuPont?
It was one of my top 3 also, and I would have to say that what came to mind, and I've had this cuvee many times whenever I get my hands on it, is that it has a very soft kind of texture to it. It's just really soft.
Well, it falls into those things that I talked about, which is it has just kind of this muted, flavor, kind of about it. I mean, it really is quite decadent, really wonderful.
I'm thinking that the next time I, would like to sort of dial in this particular style of Saison, and as we've discussed just now, Saisons, the parameters are really wide on the kinds of things you can do to make one. But, sort of to go for this particular kind, I would probably, as a brewer, start out with distilled water, something that's just,
very neutral.
Extremely neutral water, very soft water. Because that's what really, when I tasted it, I said, this is just has a very soft texture. It has that benchmark, earthy, farm-like hint of like mowed hay and alfalfa.
Wow.
I just think it's,
I
just think it's really, where it comes from. It just really suggests where this style comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I'd give it a 4 as well, for sure.
Nobody should really not make that sound. Any other comments about this beer?
I just want to say, I agree with everyone. I like the balance of it. I like the fact that it's got this crispness to it. And when I think of a true Saison, I want something that's crisp and light as well as flavorful. And I'm getting the graininess from it. I'm getting some honey flavors from it, and that crispness that just makes it really light and just like kind of floats over the tongue. So like you guys, this is a really good reference beer for those that want to know what a true Saison really is. And I give it a 4 as well.
Wow, how about that? Great pick. All right, so I'm so glad that we're out of the chute, and with a great reference beer. I tell you what, I need to move the boat over here to the next cove over. And we're going to take just a quick break here, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk a lot more about a lot more Saisons right ahead of us. So we'll be right back. Thanks. Thanks for coming back and joining us for more of the discussion about a style show we have as part of our boat beer series on Saisons. Good old boy Dave was going through his top 3, and we covered his top pick. So what's number 2 on your list here?
Okay, you may have to correct my pronunciation here.
Here, let me help you in advance.
The Crooked Stave Vielle Artisanal.
I think you did a great job.
Anyone who knows anything about Crooked Stave, or more specifically their head brewer, knows he loves Brettanomyces. The man has done papers about it, studies, would probably marry a strain of Brettanomyces if he could. In fact, I think his oldest child is named Brett. Being a Brett beer, anything you do with Brett is going to have a certain crisp, tart dryness about it, because Brettanomyces ferments out sugars that Saccharomyces, the yeast in typical beer strains, Saccharomyces will ferment out to a point. Brettanomyces goes that one step further, and this is a great example of that. It's very easy drinking, it's crisp, it's light, it's dry, it's a very good Saison. In fact, I think this is a great, beyond being a Saison, I think this is a really great bridge beer towards Brett beers.
Yeah,
and
that's a great way. I love that.
Yeah, and I'm really a big fan of this. I'm glad you brought it today, and I'm going to give this a 5.
Wow, another 5.
I gave all the other beers a 1, so it balances out.
Another great choice, and I don't mind chiming in right away. Also in my top 3 as well. Reverend Mark and I, we really loved our time, in Colorado at GABF, and I didn't really think that I walked away with enough Crooked Stave, while we were there. I didn't enjoy enough while we were there. I didn't walk away with enough. Actually, this bottle I brought back from New York, this is probably a lot easier for most people to get a hold of than some of the other Crooked Staves beers. This is my tasting notes around Crooked Stave Vielle Artisan is it has a blush of Brett, and we've had a lot of great shows on sour beers. It would be very difficult for me to throw this in the deep end and say that this is a full-blown sour. It just has enough tartness that enhances the quality of the beer here, and we talk about the element of restraint and how that can many times enhance the quality of the beer. And I think that that's really what I'm seeing here is some measure of restraint in the amount of Brett that's been applied here.
Yeah.
The next word that I used was lush. It's very decadent on the tongue. I mean, it was very difficult for me to separate the DuPont and the Vielle in terms of the way that it felt in your mouth and the mouthfeel around it, and it had a very decadent, kind of quality about it. But I just love the aroma off this. This is something that I could just sit and inhale all day long. I just really I love the smell of this. The fact that it is so widely available is definitely one of those things that I think that most people, if they're trying to really find a really great Saison, should really put this, on their shopping list. It's a little pricey. You'll probably be staring at the bottle and going, holy cow. But I will tell you that I would gladly trade one bottle of this for 4 bottles of some other things. So my SUDS rating for Crooked Stave Vielle Artisanal is going to be a 4. Any other comments about this?
Well, I would say that, in terms of the beer itself, and I did not rate this as one of my top 3, but I definitely, made notation of the fact that it was more on the sort of the sour end of the Saison spectrum. That, for me, it had a very delightful, crisp, mineral sort of effervescence that cleansed the palate. And I think that for like a sour type Saison, it is really completely superb. But to me, it's not the quintessence of Saison as it's historically understood.
Sure.
I think the fact that it's an artisanal barrel-aged Saison defies what Saison means.
Yep, I agree.
Right.
I would never think of a Saison as being aged at all.
Yeah, and so it's not to detract from the beauty and the complexity and even the sour aspect of this beer, which I completely appreciate, but I sort of like pull back and say, in terms of how I see this style within the sort of the guidelines of the history of this particular evolution of beer, it's not like a perfect example, but I think it's a very interesting and to me extremely appealing commercial high-end product that I would snatch up a bottle of it any time. So I'm not in any way dismissing the beer. I think it's great, but I just didn't give it as high a rating because I'm thinking I've kind of got my purist cap on today, and I'm just thinking it's not quite within that history of what the beer is.
Sorry, what's your SUDS rating?
I gave it a 3.
3, how about that? Julieanna, any comments on this?
Well, I was lucky enough a couple of years ago to be at a conference where Chad Jacobson from Crooked Stave actually talked about his Brett project and the whole story behind Crooked Stave. And as a home brewer, I'm completely in love with what he has done, in terms of yeast strains. So, we're lucky enough that when we go and grab our ingredients, we go to a local shop that has the yeast for us, that has the malt for us. We pick up what we need and we make our beer and we're on our merry way. Well, what he has done with Brett and subsequent other sour strains has just made me really appreciate this new line of beers that has really come out. I mean, it's not just a true Saison anymore. It's evolved. And this is a really nice blend of what a true Saison is, but just it's been Americanized a bit, and it's been, for lack of a better word, funkified a bit more. You still get that earthiness and that grassiness, but it's got this little extra something else, which I think is, just the love of, this softness that Chad has put into this beer. And, it's something that I, as a home brewer, want to strive for myself, because it's taking what we normally think of as a Saison and like kind of taking it out of the box. And giving it some new flavors and some new ways of interpreting it. So I really appreciate this beer, and this was in my top 3 as well.
So what's your SUDS rating?
I'm giving it a 4.
4, about that. Cool. All right, so 2 out of the chute, is that right?
Yep.
To number 3 here, Dr. Dave.
Here we go. So, don't know how to say this, but I'll give it a shot. Monet Biologique.
So for those of you that are not familiar with, so this is DuPont Brewery, Brasserie DuPont, and they actually label and call their beer different things depending on where you're at. So if you're in Belgium, this is the Monet Biologique. is the name of the beer. If you're here in the States, it has a label on it that you can read called Foret.
Yeah.
Is what you'll see on the label. I solved that mystery and butchered probably all of that much better than you did. So
It's all right, man. You
Woohoo!
did a really great job.
I don't.
So let's call it Foret.
Okay.
So this is going to be weird. I rated this beer pretty high, but it doesn't taste like a beer to me. It is so earthy. It tastes like home cooking or something to me. In fact, when I tasted it, it tastes like vegetable soup. I'll be perfectly honest, because it's got this real.
I'm trying to decide which button is that.
Yeah, I think that's the dump button. No, so it really does. It tastes like home cooking to me. It tastes like something that you would give farmhands during a long day of hard work. Out in the fields. Very, like I said, very earthy, very even-bodied. And with just a little bit of that vegetative flavor to it. So I gave this a 4.
Wow, how about that? Well, I'll pick up right off of David once again. So, of all the beers we had today, this was the only one I just did not like at all. My tasting notes around the Foret were, it was very astringent. It was very bitter. I actually wrote down the word ick.
Wow.
And that's very tough for me to do with, definitely with DuPont, itself. When it's alongside, the cuvee, that we had from DuPont as well. I don't know if this had turned. I don't know if the vegetable soup thing, wasn't working for me. I don't know what, but anyway.
You're more of a minestrone guy, aren't you?
So my SUDS rating for this was actually a 2. So any other comments about Foret here?
Well, I would have to take a little exception with that. I really saw this Foret as one way I talk about how you can sort of delineate or divide away the really good craft beer in America from like 80% of everything else that's sold at ballparks and NASCAR races is.
Wow.
Somebody doesn't like NASCAR.
I grew up at NASCAR. My dad was a NASCAR fanatic, so I've been to so many. I actually have a picture with Richard Petty. So I love NASCAR, but I don't necessarily like the beer that they serve there, although they may be improving. Who knows? Is that if you take a really cold can of some sort of InBev product and snap it, crack it open, pour it into a glass and let it sit around for about an hour, and then you do the same with a really good craft beer, crack it open, pour it in a glass, sit around for about an hour. Which one really has the chance of improving, and which one,
that's true.
Strictly declines. And I think that this Foret is one of these beers, because I'm sipping it right now, is that it really is a great. It's even though it's still and almost, completely dead, it just has this very interesting, earthy. Aspect to it that again takes me back to sort of the farm origins of this style. It's fairly dry, it's floral, it's fruity, and it has kind of a residual honey, or almost like it's kind of like a honeysuckle. I was actually out this morning just walking around. The honeysuckle are starting to bloom everywhere, and I just could kind of get a sense of honeysuckle in this beer. And so I think that the hops that were part of this, sort of total recipe regimen played a somewhat supportive role, as they should have, but they weren't dominant. And I just think that it's really as good of a basic Saison as it gets. So I gave it a rating of a 4.
Wow, how about that? Any other comments about Foret here?
Well, I guess I'm the weirdo of the group, but I really no.
Newsflash.
Whatever. Just because I'm a girl. I tasted burnt sugar, and every time I tasted this, it was burnt sugar. Burnt sugar. I mean,
So
like,
was it burnt sugar?
it was burnt sugar. I know, it's shocking. No, I mean, I really wanted to like this beer. It's got a
Did
great
you want to like it
pedigree.
because it was from DuPont or because...
Right. I wanted to like it because it was from
Yeah.
DuPont.
And
And it had a great pedigree.
I know, and I think that I had some of that same mindset that was kind
You
of
were
coming
kind of
into me.
conflicted a little bit.
I was like, for a brewery that I just I love to gush about, and having it alongside the other DuPont that we had
Right.
here was like, what happened?
Exactly. Well, I wasn't getting the crispness. And all I got was the burnt sugar. I mean, and I tried it like right out of the bottle, and then I let it warm up, thinking that it would change a bit. And I mean, I'm sorry. I'm glad you enjoy it, but me, on the other hand, all I'm tasting is like burnt sugar from when my grandmother would make the apple pies, and then she would have the excess dough, and she would make these like sort of twists out of the excess dough, and she would like coat the thing in sugar and then put it in the oven. And when it would come out, all I would taste is this burnt sugar, which may or may not be good to some people, but to me it was like, I'd rather have the apple pie. I really don't want this. So sadly for this, I'm rating it a 2.
Wow. So whatever Julieanna was sensitive to here obviously hit both our palates.
Wait, Wonder Twins on each side of the table here.
We think you guys are twisted. Anyway.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, I think the brand has overpowered your palate. But anyway,
Moving on.
moving on. Well, Dave, thanks for covering your top 3, and I'm glad we got to chime in as we got to go around and cover a little bit more. Let's move the boat on over to the next cove here. Julieanna, let's cover your top 3.
Okay, well, one of my top 3 was the Crooked Stave, which everyone
Yeah.
agreed upon.
Cool.
The next one is, and maybe it's because I brought this, I don't know, but the Saison de Lente from the Bruery. I really, really enjoyed this because it was crisp and it was flavorful and it had this little like tinge of honey. To me, it was all that reminds me of spring. It's like the beginning of big flavors, but not quite. It's just sort of introducing you to something completely different from the porters and stouts of the winter. And to me, this is just a really great balanced beer. And I give this a 4.
Wow, a 4. How about that? And, I thought it was a really great choice. Any other comments here about the brewery?
Yeah, I thought it was very well balanced. It had a nice touch of spice to it, very flavorful without being overpowering. So it was a good light saison. Very good example of the style, and I also gave it a 4.
4 as well. Well, my tasting notes on Saison de Lente, it was a lot going on. It was a bit dry. It was citrus. It was kind of malty. It was nice that this beer was in this show. So if you didn't catch our other episode on the brewery takeover from the brewery, go back and listen to it. Very good, because I'm still Brian. Is still hanging on my mind.
Oh, sure.
I may go to extreme, elements just to secure some more of the Brian for sure. And I've really enjoyed just a long line of great, beer from the brewery. This just didn't do it for me though. I don't know, it just kind of got lost. And part of it, I think, was the comparative element of everything that we had going on. within this tasting. So it didn't hit my top 3. My SUDS rating for Saison de Lente is actually going to be a 3. Reverend Mark, any comments on this beer?
Actually, it's in my top 3, and I have to say that of course, sort of going into it, that I knew that it was an Americanized version, of a classic Belgian style.
Right.
But I have to say that in spite of my initial reservations, that I thought it had just the right kind of sort of wild Brett underbody that helped to sort of underscore the musky artisanal quality of the style. Maybe a little bit more hop than I would imagine would come out of the Belgian region, but not overly. It wasn't so over Americanized that it sort of blunted the style. But I thought it had some really good kind of spice and honey aspect to it. It was fairly dry. So again, I was skeptical when I looked at the bottle because I love the brewery. So don't get me wrong, I love just about everything that they do. But when you start kind of venturing into the Belgian, into the beer world, and I started getting really skeptical. But I have to give them, a really strong rating on this. So I gave them a 4 as well.
Wow, how about that? All right. I want to. We're going to take a quick break here, allow you to catch up with whoever you're listening on this particular episode. We're going to turn back and listen to the rest of Julieanna's picks and some more discussion about Saisons. We'll be right back. Thanks for coming back and enjoying the rest of this episode we have on Saisons. Julieanna, you were covering some of your top 3, and I'm glad we got to go through your first one. What else was on your list here?
Well, besides the Crooked Stave that we shared, the other one is this Jolly Pumpkin. God, I love this Jolly Pumpkin. Sorry. It is... To me, it is so balanced. Like, when I think of this Saison, I think of something that's really crisp, really light on the tongue. But this is so flavorful. I mean, I'm tasting grass, and I'm tasting honey, and I'm tasting, herbiness. But I'm also getting this crispness from the yeast, and it's just so yummy. This is a really great balance to me, and I mean, this rivals with a Crooked Stave. It's just really, it's a great beer to have in this flight, and I'm so happy that you brought it. And I mean, this I rate a really high 4.
Wow. I'm sorry. Let me switch around. There we go. 4 on that. So, a really fabulous choice, and I'm going to pick up the baton rather quickly because that was my absolutely number 1 pick, and something that absolutely just swept me away, out of the sea of Saisons. The tasting notes I have around Jolly Pumpkins, Baudelaire, Beer IO Saison it's complex, it's incredibly tasty, it's sweet and floral. It is like drinking a floral bouquet.
Sure. But it's so balanced.
It is.
It blows you away.
And everything that I would think about in like the perfect Saison was in this cup, and I'm just, I'm so glad we had this here tonight. It's unfortunate that some of the distribution model around Jolly Pumpkin has shifted and changed, but it is, coming back around where they're able to reach a lot more people. This is just a fabulous beer. I'm very disappointed that I only have the 1 bottle. That's about the only thing that sucks about this whole thing. My SUDS rating for the Jolly Pumpkin Baudelaire Beer iOS Saison is going to be a 5. 5.
Wow.
Listen to that hang time.
Yes.
Give me another. And you guys know I do not give it up easily. And for something to hang with me that well, I could not gush enough about this beer. Any other comments about Jolly Pumpkin here?
Well, I mean, I'd have to say that, I mean, I think it contains many aspects of, the yummy fruit and spice infused saisons that, we celebrate with, being summertime and, being reminiscent of working in the fields and of suggesting a certain kind of earthy terroir. But, with this particular beer, in terms of my tasting notes, I noted that I don't really associate the farmhouse simplicity with this extremely heady and layered beverage. I mean, I think this is a very incredible beer, and I think it's great, but I think that it's a little bit out of alignment. And I think today I've just been operating more from what are saisons historically and what have they become today. And I think that there's room for everybody, so don't get me wrong. I would definitely pick up a bottle of this. I really liked it, yet I think that it's more on the far end of the evolving saison spectrum. So I gave it a 3.
Dave, any comments about Jolly Pumpkin, little layer here?
Yeah, I just really liked it. I got a lot of peppery sharpness to it, but it was very, very well rounded with a fruitiness and a floral bouquet. So I gave it a 4.
Well, just a really great beer. Julieanna, you have one more in your top 3. Is that it?
That was my 3.
There's your 3. Cool. Well, it's a good transition. Let me move the boat over here, another cove, so we can make sure we cover all of the really great beer for the saisons here. And of course, the geese are flying overhead. Put my pole here in the water, as well as a couple of oars here. Well, we've actually covered my top 3. How about that? So my top 3 were several of the ones we've covered already. Top of my list is absolutely Jolly Pumpkin. I couldn't gush enough about this beer. The Saison Dupont Cuvee just was like the perfect blanket, around my palate. I don't know, for whatever reason, this is the perfect wedding beer. The Saison Dupont. It's something that I would very easily take and stack up against a ton of champagne, at a wedding. I think it would hold up really well, and I think everybody would be high-fiving me, going, thank you for bringing something that has that much flavor. The last one that I had in my top 3 was the Crooked Stave Vielle. There are a lot of great beers in this lineup. I've enjoyed chiming in about quite a few of them. And you've hit both the top and the bottom that I had, in my list as well. So, Reverend Mark, I'll let you just slide over. Hang on a second. Let me fire up the boat here. Move over to the next cove, since we've covered everything that I had. If you don't cover one more beer that I wanted us to chat about, I'll cover that. But what's in your top 3, Reverend Mark?
Oh, we have covered my top 3, and I've chimed in on all of them. But I have to give the my top score. I'll go in descending order to the Dupont Cuvee. I just think that it is still unquestionably the benchmark of the style. And we can sort of accentuate in different directions from what it has to offer us. But I think, as beer makers, be we hobbyists or industrialists, that this is a style to be reckoned with. The next one, actually, which I said just a minute ago, I was very surprised to say that came in second for me, was the Bruery Saison de Lente. I just thought it was an amazing beer. It I thought at first this is just
Says a lot for Patrick.
This is an Americanized
great beer.
Yeah.
The Saison is going to be a little bit too hoppy. It's just going to kind of blunt out the more subtle aspects of this style, but it didn't. So I'll definitely have that as my second runner-up, and then I know that this still was we had a divided table over this one, but the Foret, to me, I think was my third.
We were right.
Yeah.
Figure out who the we is.
Yeah.
But there were so many other good Saisons, that we didn't even list, obviously, within our top three, that this has been an extremely enjoyable afternoon.
So I see that you brought in the last Saison that I thought was worthy a bit of our discussion. So one of the reference beers that was in the BJCP guidelines was actually in our lineup today. It was really great. I was able to pick up this bottle at Craft Brewed in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was very happy to see this just pleasantly sitting there right on the shelf with an address saying, "Mike, please talk about us." Is the Saison de Pipaix, and it's very nice you brought it in here, and it was in your lineup, and it was also very close to me in the top three as well. This is another Belgian brewery, and some of my tasting notes around this particular beer is the first word I wrote down was raisin. It had a lot of raisin on the aroma. And had a lot of raisin, within the taste itself, and certainly, my palate is so attuned to tasting wine. I was really surprised to taste all of a sudden, this incredible grape quality, in a beer itself, and it was very easy for me to pick it out. I was like, wow, these are like dead grapes. This is like, deep currants, that have been infused. I don't know if they dropped this in a wine barrel, for a brief period of time. I don't know if it's some element of blending. I don't know if it's a cross-pollination. I don't know what brought that into the fray, but it's definitely there. It's very earthy. And it was a little bit tart, and it was a nice compliment. It was like a little kiss, on your palate itself. So I don't mind offering up my SUDS rating for the Saison de Pipaix was actually a 4 as well, and a really great beer and worthy of our discussion. I didn't want it to drift off. I know she had it kind of sitting right here.
Yeah, it was my fourth. It certainly was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments about that beer or any other beers?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably my fourth as well. I got a lot of earthiness out of it, I guess it's one of those things it is sort of it's like Saison DuPont. It is a prototypical Saison that you could go to it and know what a Saison should taste like. And I think it's very well-rounded, very, we keep using the word balanced. That should possibly be one of the words in the title of the show. But, I think that this beer, you could go get it. It is pretty available, and taste it and know what a Saison should be. And I gave it a 4 as well.
Oh, wow, about that. Any other beers you want to chat about, Julieanna?
No, but I enjoyed that beer as well, and I had rated it highly. It's interesting though how all of the beers that we've had, the Saisons, they've gone from like super crispy to almost honey flavored and then some that kind of got a little dank, and I don't know whether that was oxidation or whatever, but it's just really interesting how each brewery has their own take on this, and how most of them are consistent, but some of them are kind of way out there in terms of flavor profiles. And to me, this one was one of those that was out there, but yet I still really enjoyed it. And very earthy, not quite as crisp as some of the other ones I had, but I really enjoyed this one as well. And I guess that's just, for some people that are kind of concerned about Saisons because they hear something about it being, it's a really earthy, dank kind of flavor.
I wouldn't
They don't.
say that as-
Right. I mean, you don't. It doesn't have to be that way. And today we tasted so many that were just
A very broad range.
exactly and really delicious flavors
Yeah.
that you don't have to be afraid of these Belgian beers. They're really yummy.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way that I would ever, put that Jolly Pumpkin in the Saison Dupont Cuvee, and say these taste alike.
Right.
But the style characteristics about them are just so spot on. I mean, holy cow. I mean, it was really, it's quite an honor to sit here and taste those, kind of alongside each other. It was really, it was the collection of beers that we put together in this tasting, I thought were representative and not helping people to step down into that rut of thinking this is about a flavor profile as opposed to a style profile. And
Exactly.
I think that is, I'm very proud that I think we've done our discussion, really well, about the style itself, covering the range of beers that we have. Well, there you have it. I think we've...
And the Hawks win yet again.
covered a nice range of things out here on the lake today. Definitely with all of our discussion about the broad range of saisons that we've covered. So I want to thank you for joining us for this really great show on saisons. I know it was a long one, but hopefully you caught it in one fell swoop of listening, or you broke it up in however you wanted to. But really great episode to come back to always. Thanks to all of our listeners here on Sips, Suds, and Smokes. You can catch all of our episodes online on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, Uncle John's Basement, and Spreaker, our native media host. And nobody knows where that is, but it is a great place to call home every single week. Our terrestrial radio stations are questioning why they've ever signed up to broadcast our show, but they're always expanding for some reason. We're deciding whether they're doing vertically or horizontally, whatever it is, or imbibing their beer, and they'd like to hear more of our shows. If you'd like to hear our show in your favorite radio station, send them a note and copy us as well. Drop us a 6-pack of beer and an email. You can reach us anytime at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every single day at SipsudSmokes. Our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news about wine, beer, distilled spirits, you name it, it's on there. My favorite shoelace problem. Do us a favor and take this time to rate this episode. Yeah, I know you're questioning that. You didn't have to pay anything to listen to this episode, but if you took the time to rate our episode, that'd be a big help to us, and we actually get to see your feedback as well. Tell us what you think about Dave's feedback, most of all. And I definitely want to thank my co-host for joining me for this episode as well. Reverend Mark, thank you for being here.
Toodles.
Toodles. That's a new one. I don't think that works so well. Anyway, good old boy Dave, thanks for being here.
Drink all your beer or you won't get any dessert.
Oh, I like that one. That one works pretty well. It's good. Juliana, thanks for being here.
More beer.
More beer, I agree. Definitely more beer, and most of all, hopefully you'll join us for another episode. This is good old boy Mike. I'm going to ask you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see y'all next time.